Okay, let's unpack this. We've got some, well, pretty compelling material here.
Hmm.
Looking at a potential, maybe a game changer for South Africa, a wealth tax.
Right.
And the text we're diving into today, it really doesn't pull any punches, does it?
No, it's quite direct. It argues there's what, over 60 billion rand potentially on the table?
Exactly. And it forces us to think, who should contribute? How could that money reshape the country?
Especially for those most in need. Yeah, it really frames the whole discussion around this urgency to tackle inequality.
The deep-seated inequality.
What's fascinating, I think, is just the scale it presents right away and the directness.
Yeah.
It just lays bare these economic disparities. You kind of have to confront the implications of so much wealth being concentrated.
Well, there's also such widespread poverty.
Exactly. It's not just numbers, is it? It's about the fundamental structure, the way the economy is set up.
Absolutely. And the text throws some truly staggering figures at us right off the bat. South Africa, holding the top spot globally for income inequality.
Which is quite something.
It really is. To grasp it, we're talking about roughly 370,000 people, the top 1%.
Just 1%.
Controlling over 70% of the nation's wealth. That's, homes, stocks, businesses, all of it.
And the sheer magnitude of that concentration, it has such far-reaching consequences, doesn't it?
For everything.
Yeah. Access to good education, healthcare, just general social stability. When such a tiny percentage holds most of the resources, it just inherently limits opportunities for, well, almost everyone else.
But text uses this really powerful analogy to sort of bring it into focus.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine 100 people in a room. One person has 70 loaves of bread.
70, okay.
9 others, together, have 20 loaves.
Yeah.
And the remaining 90 people,
Oh.
they're left fighting over just 10 loaves.
Wow. That's stark.
It really is. A stark illustration of the imbalance. And what's concerning is the text says this gap isn't shrinking, it's widening every year.
That image really sticks with you, doesn't it? It highlights the disproportionate distribution in such a tangible way. Makes you think about the long-term viability, the fairness, really, of an economy skewed like that.
So against this backdrop, the text puts forward a potential solution.
Okay.
A 3% annual wealth tax, specifically on individuals with assets over 50 million rand.
Right. So targeted at the very top.
Exactly. Now, 3% might sound, I don't know, modest.
Maybe.
But given the immense wealth concentrated there, the estimated revenue is huge, over 60 billion rand per year.
60 billion. And what's significant about that number is its potential, right? What it could actually do.
Precisely.
The text gives concrete examples, doesn't it? So you can visualize the impact.
It does. It outlines how this revenue could potentially fund the entire rollout of the national health insurance.
The whole thing.
The whole thing. Or alleviate student debt for hundreds of thousands, or provide basic income grants to millions of unemployed youth.
So really significant social programs.
Huge. And a crucial point the text emphasizes.
Yeah.
These could potentially be funded without raising VAT.
Which is important because VAT tends to hit lower income households hardest, doesn't it?
Disproportionately, yes. So this presents a compelling alternative, maybe, to the usual ways of raising revenue.
By focusing on accumulated wealth, yeah. It suggests a different path to funding essential services and tackling that inequality we talked about.
Now, the text then shifts focus a bit. It talks about what it defines as the middle class in South Africa.
Okay.
And it paints this picture of financial precarity, suggesting many are, and this is a direct quote, one salary away from poverty.
That's a strong statement. I think a lot of people might feel that resonates.
It feels quite relatable, yeah. That feeling of stability being maybe quite fragile.
Does the text give indicators for that, like debt levels or...
It argues that a lot of middle-class assets are actually tied up in debt.
Ah.
Car loans, home mortgages, that kind of thing. So you might have a steady income, but actual liquid wealth, a safety net.
Might be quite limited.
Exactly. Which leads to this argument that, despite this vulnerability, the middle class often ends up opposing measures like a wealth tax.
That raises a really crucial point about, well, what is wealth? The text seems to draw a line between income earners with debt and those with substantial unencumbered assets.
Yes, it challenges that idea of a single economic interest across different income levels. It goes further, actually. It suggests the middle class has been, in a sense, weaponized.
Weaponized? How so?
To protect a system that ultimately benefits a much smaller, much wealthier elite It highlights the vast difference between, say, what a middle-class person earns over a lifetime.
Compared to how billionaires accumulate wealth.
Maybe just a few years, yeah.
Yeah.
Provocative argument.
It really is. It forces you to consider whose interests the current structure actually serves. Does it benefit a broad spectrum or
mainly the top. So let's clarify. What exactly is wealth for this tax? The text is clear. Not income.
Right, not salaries.
No. It's accumulated assets. Property, stocks, maybe shares in private businesses, offshore investments, luxury items, art.
That kind of thing. And it's important to say this isn't some totally new idea globally, is it?
Not at all. The text points out countries like France, Norway, Spain, Argentina. They've all had wealth taxes in some form.
Right, so there are precedents. It gives a global context for, whether this is feasible.
The Argentina example during COVID is quite striking.
The one-time tax.
Yeah, it reportedly raised over 140 billion Argentine pesos, specifically for emergency relief.
Wow, so that's a real-world case of using a wealth tax to generate significant funds quickly for a crisis.
Exactly. It shows it can be done politically and what it can achieve.
Offers a concrete example of how these taxes can meet urgent societal needs. It shows it's possible, at least sometimes.
So bringing it back to South Africa, the text reiterates this proposed 3% tax just on the ultra-high net worth individuals.
Those over 50 million rand in assets
Could generate that 60 billion rand annually. Right. Without directly hitting salaries, small businesses, or even things like bonds.
which reinforces the targeted nature of it. The idea, as the text presents it, is to focus the burden where the capacity is greatest without stalling the wider economy.
Okay, but then the big question. If the potential benefits seem so clear, why hasn't it happened?
Good question.
The text offers a pretty blunt answer.
Which is?
It suggests political parties are, well, hesitant because of the influence of wealthy donors and a general protection of elite interests.
That highlights the potential clash between policy and, vested interests, doesn't it? The power held by those who might be taxed.
It also points to how the media often reacts. Think about proposals like land redistribution or nationalization.
Often labeled radical or dangerous, yeah.
Right. The text then flips that, asking, isn't the real danger the extreme inequality we have now? 36 million in poverty versus a tiny group of ultra-wealthy.
That's a powerful reframing of risk, isn't it? It suggests maybe the status quo, the continuation of extreme inequality, carries its own significant societal risks.
Maybe bigger risks.
Perhaps. Risks that might outweigh the perceived dangers of wealth redistribution measures.
And the text comes back to that critical view of the middle class again, especially regarding things like the national health insurance, the NHI.
Okay.
It suggests potential opposition might not just be about, say, worries over quality of care, but maybe a reluctance to share resources, to contribute to services benefiting a wider group.
That's a challenging perspective. It definitely pushes you to think critically about motivations in a really unequal society, why different groups support or oppose certain social programs.
But let's really try and visualize what 60 billion rand could do. The text paints a pretty compelling picture.
Okay, let's hear it.
We're talking about the possibility of building and properly staffing over 100 modern hospitals.
100 hospitals? Wow.
Or fully funding higher education for all qualified students from poor and working class backgrounds.
Eliminating that barrier.
Yeah. Or providing a meaningful basic income, grant 1,200 rand a month to over 4 million unemployed young people.
That would be transformative for many.
And upgrading every rural school. Electricity, internet, proper sanitation.
Just basic necessities, really, but vital.
Absolutely. And these aren't presented as just wishful thinking. The text argues their potential outcomes, grounded in that revenue estimate.
Right. Tangible possibilities for real social and economic improvement if the funds were there and used strategically.
The text really underscores that these aren't unrealistic dreams. They're presented as mathematically possible.
But needing political will.
Exactly. Political will and perhaps a shift in perspective, especially maybe within the middle class. It suggests that just relying on the wealthy to voluntarily solve the struggles of the majority, well, that might not be the most effective strategy for big societal change.
That final point really hammers home the source's main argument, doesn't it? A fundamental rethink of economic priorities and seeing wealth tax as a potential tool for greater equity.
Yeah, for addressing those really pressing social needs. So to kind of bring our deep dive to a close here, the core message from this material is a really strong case for a wealth tax in South Africa.
It's presented as more than just a fundraising mechanism.
Much more. A crucial step, maybe, towards tackling that deep-seated inequality, funding vital programs that could genuinely improve millions of lives.
And this deep dive really leaves you, the listener, with a significant question, I think. South Africa is facing these fundamental choices about its economic future, isn't it?
Definitely.
Will the current path, this concentration of wealth, just continue? Or will the nation look at different models? Models that maybe prioritize broader well-being?
And as we've discussed, taxing wealth could be absolutely pivotal in shaping whatever future comes next.
Yeah, it really throws that tension into sharp relief, the tension between protecting concentrated wealth on one hand and addressing widespread societal needs on the other. Something to really mull over.